Ashley and I both have pets that might make an appearance today. We'll see if they're being naughty or nice.
Right. If you hear a slight meowing, it's not a person, it's a cat.
Yep. That's okay. I heard the internet likes cats, so it should be a value add, if anything.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll give it, attendee list is going up and up and up. We'll give it another minute to make sure that we've got enough people joined before we get rolling here.
Sounds good.
Ashley, how do you feel about Christmas decorations before Thanksgiving?
I'm kind of lazy about decorations in general, so it's my fiance that really throws up the tree. He's like, "Can I put up the tree?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, if you take it down afterwards." So
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed you had no tree. I have no tree in the background as well. I love the tree, but it goes up after Thanksgiving, and I'm a stickler about that. I don't like getting
I agree.
ahead of ourselves with holidays.
I
But no
agree.
shade at all to the people who feel differently
Yeah.
in the
Well,
audience.
well, frankly, all of the Black Friday deals are coming out this week, and I was like, Black Friday's not for like another month, and then I realized it's actually Thanksgiving next week.
Oh
So
yeah, it's happening.
I don't know what day it is. I don't know what time it is.
Yeah, 2020 is weird like that.
Yeah.
Okay, we are at the 2-minute mark, so it looks like people are still rolling on in here. I keep seeing that number tick up, but we're just going to go ahead and get started. So everybody, thanks for joining us today on our webinar on Reddit's playbook on building a go-to-market strategy for LMS deployment. This webinar will be recorded, and we will send you a copy of the recording and the deck in the next 24 hours. So if you join late and missed a little bit of the prezo, don't worry too much. You'll be able to watch it later. And for those of you who are joining our webinars for the first time or may not know me, I'm Danielle. I'm Director of Sales here at WorkRamp. And WorkRamp is the leading enterprise learning platform for educating employees and customers at scale. Our corporate training platform powers learning for a lot of top companies like Zoom, Box, Workiva, and Reddit. And that's where Ashley hails from today. So today we actually have Ashley Crisostomo joining us. She is a Senior Sales Enablement Program Manager at Reddit. Ashley, super excited to have you on. Would you mind giving us a quick intro on your background?
Yeah, totally. I'm super excited to be here, and you nailed the last name. I saw it on there and I was like, is she going to nail that last name? So kudos to you. I'm super excited to be here. I'm Ashley. I'm a Senior Sales Enablement Program Manager here at Reddit. And I might have a little bit of an unusual path to the enablement world. I started out in marketing in the ever exciting world of media agencies in New York, kind of working primarily with entertainment clients. And I ended up moving to the Bay Area for personal reasons and transitioned to early stage startups like everybody does, working at customer success side and SaaS and kind of related to media. And then I eventually went back to advertising at Twitter. As a seller, managing retail clients, but eventually knew I wanted to do something else. So in that, I explored new roles within Twitter and had the opportunity to lead that global product training for that sales team. And then at the beginning of this year, I joined Reddit. Super excited for an opportunity to help build the enablement function from the ground up. I was the second hire on the team, so it really was kind of starting from scratch. And yeah, so I've had the fortunate experience of having been a marketer and then a salesperson that sells to marketers and then the enablement person that teaches the sellers. So kind of a zigzag way to get to enablement, but it's been a great baseline for me.
Awesome. Well, glad you're here in Enablement and glad you're here with us today. I'm excited to learn from you. In terms of agenda, guys, we're going to cover first an overview of the sales enablement function at Reddit, so you guys all know what Ashley does over there. Then we'll cover the go-to-market action plan for launching Mission Control, the WorkRamp instance. And then finally, towards the end, we will cover our crowd favorites, so learnings and also a live AMA portion. For those of you who are Reddit learners or Reddit users, you probably know what AMA stands for, but this is when you get to ask Ashley any questions that you have. So a friendly reminder here to drop your questions in the comment section of the Q&A in the chat, and we'll catch them all at the end there. Awesome. Well, Ashley, if you're ready to get started, we can talk a little bit about your background and take a closer look at your sales enablement role at Reddit. Maybe we can start with this question. I'm curious, what programs does your team own?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I started as the second hire on the team. We are now up to 4 thanks to a new hire that just started, I think, last week. Yeah, she's only been here for about a week and a half. So we're a small team building from the ground up this year, but we manage everything from sales new hire, onboarding to go-to-market strategies to seller skills, and then our new hire is actually going to help us scale external learning for our customers as well.
Awesome. And then the core programs that you guys own, they're broken down into a couple different areas, right? So I know go-to-market is a focus, but you touch a lot of different other pieces for the go-to-market teams as well.
Yeah, so I personally manage our onboarding and new hire. That was actually my biggest focus at the beginning of this year, to get that up and running, but that inevitably leads to our ongoing training when it comes to our go-to-market strategy. So logistically, we all kind of covered a lot of bases. We're all kind of jack of all trades. So right now I'm kind of managing that go-to-market with product primarily and with marketing, anything that we take to market with our sales teams, but everything that goes to market and is hot then has to go back to new hire. So logistically, yes, it makes sense for me to manage both and actually get the content kind of in a cyclical motion.
Nice. Well, you do a lot over there, and I'm glad that WorkRamp can kind of help be a piece of that puzzle for you guys. I remember when you purchased WorkRamp, so like any other team, you guys needed to roll this out internally. What was going through your mind when your team started gearing up for that LMS deployment there?
Yeah, well, the first thing was excitement because I had the opportunity to actually make the decision and build it myself. I looked back at my past experience, both as a learner, because I was in the sales team. And then when I transitioned to the enablement team, the LMS rollouts back then. And I think some of the biggest challenges were around like the value of it. When I was in sales, I didn't really understand. I don't know what an LMS was. And I think most sellers don't know what an LMS is. I didn't when I joined the enablement team. So I was like, and I remember recalling as I was a seller, and there was like an LMS that I had first, and I won't mention the name of it, but it was kind of known on the floor as like the thing that I took quizzes on. There was really no practical training on it. It was just something that they deployed as the mechanism for us to like take quizzes. So that's just not the reputation I wanted to have. And then kind of the user experience, I didn't really understand what it was or what I was supposed to use it. Was it supposed to help me? Was it supposed to like keep track of me? I didn't know that. And then really the awareness of it, because I didn't know the value, I didn't really know to go to it at all, unless somebody told me to. So I think when I think about our LMS deployment, it's obviously the content strategy and the strategy as our internal team, but I think about, okay, what is the perception of our sellers and are they going to like it? Are they going to hate it? And how do we make it more towards something that they want to use versus that they have to use?
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, by the way. That's totally aligned with, I think, the value that WorkRamp brings in the space, which is we are trying to be a more intuitive and frankly more enjoyable experience for learners than a lot of LMSs they maybe have used in the past. So yeah, I can see why we work well together. I'm glad you kind of share that view.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. In our RFP process, one of the biggest things was usability. Like we had a requirements doc. We we do all the things that people do to get an RFP and LMS, but our main thing was to sandbox it. Is it easy? Can I figure out how to use it in 30 minutes or less? Yeah. And there's a lot of LMSs that you just simply cannot.
Totally. You touched on this a little bit before, by the way, but just to dive in a little bit deeper and double click on it, how is the Reddit enablement team structured and what are the roles specifically in designing and executing that go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, so when we kicked off the RFP process, there was just 2 of us on the team at the time. Nagar is our head of sales enablement. So she created the foundation of the team about 6 months prior to my arrival. So when I joined, we were kind of we're stuck in a room, we were whiteboarding and creating our content strategy. And we had the opportunity to start a new LMS. The sales team really hadn't been introduced to an LMS. So we were able to think of this total experience from ground zero. Yep. And so I led the brief and evaluation process and set up our sandboxes for us. And it was between myself and Nagar to test and understand where we wanted to go and plan for that with the experiences and the sandboxes that we created. Fortunately, partway through while we were RFPing and onboarding WorkRamp, we had our 3rd hire, Grace, who is our instructional designer. So I would say Grace would have led our great programs that we launched with that really made it a great experience.
Awesome. Shout out to Grace and Nagar. I see you guys on the attendee list. Did have to scroll to find them. There's a lot of attendees today, but I'm glad you guys could both make it. And then curious to hear some of the learnings. So you kind of touched on some of these, right? Challenges you had before in terms of sales, understanding the value, enjoying the experience. But what are some major things you learned from previously deploying LMSs?
Yeah, so there was a lot of great things that I had experienced, and there were some opportunities I think we could have improved upon.
Sure.
I think the biggest the biggest takeaway I had, I've only really been a part of like one full LMS deployment. I've been on the receiving end of a few that have already been introduced, but that one deployment, it was a part of a larger LMS release company wide. So it was a big company. There was an L&D team under HR, and then there's the sales team, and there was actually a separate engineering team. And we all had our separate kind of systems, and they decided they wanted to kind of only make people go to one LMS, which I understand, and I think it was a good idea at heart. But you know, when they were L&D was leading that charge, inevitably you make concessions. Inevitably you have to you know, compromise on the features that really make sense. And you know, we really were thinking about our sellers second. So the good thing is, like, the person that was leading it came from a really, really strong user research background. So the things I learned from her was all about user testing and understanding how they want to make people use it, and the behaviors that they wanted to change. And you know, the process around user testing and beta testing. The other big thing that I learned from her was the branding of it. She really cared about how it looked. The fact that many teams were creating content for it, it really mattered that it had some sort of visual cues to make it, you know, this is for L&D, this is engineering stuff, this is sales stuff. So those simple things made it a really pro experience that I definitely wanted to take on. But some of the opportunities were around, you know, generally when when it's around L&D first, some of the things, we didn't really have a content strategy from a sales perspective going into this. It wasn't our timeline. We didn't really know how we were going to use it until after the fact. So we kind of fit our content to the platform, which was not ideal. So I think there are a lot of opportunities that, you know, had I been given another chance, I would have been able to do differently.
Cool. Yeah, learnings are everything. Hindsight is 2020. And then you touched on this a bit when you mentioned branding, but obviously you come from a marketing background. So I'm curious, what, in addition to the branding experience that was top of mind for you guys, what are some other things that you kind of pulled from a marketing go-to-market strategy into your enablement go-to-market strategy and the launch of this LMS?
Yeah, we kind of, I think about a few different ways, like marketing in general. If you've ever launched something like a new product or anything, like there's a lot of ways that people do it. There's a lot of phases. You generate excitement, you launch the thing, you have to introduce it to people through different formats and make multiple announcements, remind them, and then continue on those pulses. So that's one thing that we wanted to do. We definitely didn't want to just like email people and say, hey, here's a new thing, enjoy, or throw people into a room and make them go through a training around the platform that trains them. It's just, those things didn't make sense for us, and it frankly weren't that exciting to plan. And we help our go-to-market teams, our product teams, take stuff to market, and we help them do it excitingly. You know, you have to attract your customers. So there's no reason why we couldn't give ourselves that same treatment. And it represents our team. So it really mattered for us, not since we were building our reputation within the company as well.
Awesome. Well, Ashley, I think this is a good segue if you actually want to walk us through your go-to-market strategy here for the deployment. I'd love to hand it over to you. I know Ashley has some great slides she prepared for today.
Awesome. All right, let me just get this set up. All right. Can you see the screen?
How's it going, Ryan?
We're good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. So how did we do the go-to-market treatment for our work ramp rollout? I should also make the caveat here that this is our go-to-market treatment during the time of COVID and working remote. This likely would have looked very differently had we all been in the office. So I just did want to make sure that I had that caveat. So as I mentioned earlier, coming to Reddit was an exciting opportunity for me to have a second chance to do an LMS launch. There are a lot of things I learned from the previous LMS launches through a variety of mentors with diverse backgrounds, but there's always room for that what if. So if I could summarize my do-overs, it would be to establish value quickly. In the past, I hadn't led those discussions, like I mentioned, around the LMS rollout timelines. Either the LMS was already established, or the RFP process was led by another team. So I never had the opportunity to really craft that first impression for my learners. And then I wanted to design for my learners. This probably is an obvious thing for a group of enablement people, but it can get easy to be caught between cross-functional teams and your sellers. So I really didn't want to walk away with the LMS reputation of the platform that makes people do quizzes. That's like one win that I think I could have walked away with, that I would have said that it was a success.
Everybody loves getting quizzed, right?
I just didn't want to be the principal anymore. I really wanted it to be something that people really like to see. So, and then finally, I just didn't want to snub my own launch. The learning management system is the key to our success in scaling, especially as we're remote. So we wanted to put our best foot forward, and the same excitement that we do for our learners or our cross-functional partners. So I kind of wanted to dive into some of the tactical things hopefully people can take away that we focused on during our LMS launch, starting with the idea of establishing value quickly. And so we did this first by identifying a flagship program to anchor to. This helped us focus our LMS needs, our analysis around a real scenario where we could actually sandbox the strawman experience and find the right platform for our needs. So that's what I was talking about when could I set this up in 30 minutes or less? Can I understand this? And if I gave it to Nagar and she were to try to figure out how to get through the experience, can she do it intuitively without too much direction? For us, we had a new Reddit sales narrative launching in about 3 to 4 months from our RFP stage. So it's a great timeline for us to aim for kind of doing this large program. And the demands of our vision narrative stretched our LMS needs from workshop organization to on-demand courses, to feedback and certification. And all of this was within a remote environment because 2020. And so people were introduced to every aspect that we might ask them to do in the LMS in the future. And you can see on the left, we have some screenshots of the narrative certification experience that we eventually launched. So then our flagship program helped influence the participation and enthusiasm of our executive support. In our case, our flagship program was the top of mind thing for our entire org for marketing, and in particular, our new head of sales that started around the same time. So it was kind of like this culmination of a lot of good things happening at once, and it just logistically made sense for us to kind of hang our hat on this as our debut program. And finally, I keep mentioning, put your best foot forward. I think first impressions are everything. Having been a learner, I just know how bad it could get. So we wanted to really make things that people wanted to come back to. We put a lot of time, a lot of money into an LMS. So we took the extra step to make it look as polished as the learning design or our support for the external marketing efforts. So next, when we approached the user experience side of things, we had the opportunity to design for our sales team. And as I mentioned, I have had to work with LMSs that just didn't necessarily have my sales learners in mind above the entire company. So adapting content to a tool was less than ideal. And because of this, we made space for a beta period of testing. I kind of mentioned that before. That was one thing I learned from that UX researcher, going through a real beta period of testing to understand how our sales team might interact with our platform on their own. So during our beta phase, I interviewed about 12 sellers from various teams and prompted them with common scenarios they might encounter. So I observed are they searching or are they browsing? What kind of questions are they asking? Are they just kind of typing in how to use Salesforce, or are they typing in a product name, or are they searching libraries? How do we optimize for that experience to make it as easy as possible? And these interviews were really informative. They actually helped us do things like structure libraries. They ended up helping us structure it in the way that we ended up doing so. And then also keyword strategies for our SCORM courses. So we actually take advantage of your SCORM objects. And with that, the search isn't so smart. So that's something that we figured out really quickly, is that we have to be pretty smart about the things that people might type in to get to the right content at the right time. And then the other thing that I wanted to take with me from previous launches were the small details of design. In the past, we used color to designate content owned by different teams. And in this instance, we use color to visualize cues to signal content type. And you can see on the libraries on the far left, all of them are color coded. So all of the courses content follows that same colorway. It's subtle, and I don't know if anybody really notices it, but it is something that I did recognize when I was a learner in my previous role. So it is those little things that help people kind of find their way. In the other example of product and go-to-market library, you can see different types of content that cross-pollinate within the library. So you can see tell the difference between the virtual recordings or just recordings of stuff that we've done in the past in yellow versus the on-demand courses in blue up top. So that, some people just want to see the recording of a meeting that happened a few weeks ago. They can easily find it. So again, very subtle, but this a deliberate way to brand our experience. And then finally, as a small team of 3, we had to prioritize the content we debuted with. And we decided to do that instead of just kind of throw everything up here. And we started with foundational product courses that would eventually serve as the basis for our externally facing training for our customers. So like I mentioned, we're kind of starting into the external training. So, we were thinking 12 steps ahead to where we wanted to be, but also being conservative with the resources that we currently had. And that way we could justify investing more time and money and branding into the courses that we built when we launched and debuted, because it served dual purpose for our internal and external learners. And at the same time, our sellers saw a super polished and branded experience from the get-go. So we saw this as a win-win for us. All right, now to the fun stuff, our awareness and our marketing plan. So pulling from our marketing experiences and go-to-market efforts we do internally, this was just another launch, no less than any others. For example, on the far left is one of our LinkedIn posts for our agency guide that we created the copy and animation for. So this is something that we do for our PMM team, or we help them do. And so why didn't we want to do the same for ourselves? Because why not? We make these, we create copy, we make GIFs or GIFs rather. We wanted to represent our team through the lens of the work we do for our partners. So we give ourselves the same treatment. So with that, we took the very basic marketing approach when people launch a new thing with 3 phases. So I mentioned earlier, pre-launch awareness, like are they anticipating it coming? Do they know what it is? Is there some sort of teaser that we can get out there? The launch itself, and then the sustain or the ongoing marketing efforts after the launch. So think of it like a movie studio launching a new movie. You get the teasers and the movie trailers, then you launch the movie during a major event like Thanksgiving, and then you continue to see those movie trailers trying to drive you to the movie theater afterwards. So we kind of took that basic framework. So I could take you through what this all looked like and bring it all together for you. So I mentioned we anchored our launch around our flagship program. So our pre-launch awareness kicked off with our heavy hitter, which was an email from our head of sales who emphasized the importance of the program and gave a brief preview of what to expect for the certification. So this was an easy win. He cared about it. He was brand new. We were kind of hitting the big reset button on the sales team. So this was a no-brainer for us to have him kind of get people in the mindset of what's to come. And after our initial narrative workshops, it was time to launch that narrative certification, and with the official debut of Mission Control. So like Danielle, you mentioned, we actually branded our LMS to be called Mission Control. Reddit has a little bit of a space theme. Snoo's a little alien for that background, where that came from. So along with the release of our narrative certification path, we launched our Slack announcement featuring that GIF that I had shown on the previous slide, which emphasized the value of Mission Control and how to get started. And then we soon followed with a special feature of Mission Control in our bi-weekly sales newsletter, reiterating those same key messages and resources to get started in Mission Control. And then after that initial launch of our certification, inevitably we needed to follow up with reminders, of course, to submit their certifications for review. And at this time, we hit them with a little surprise and delight. We sent our whole sales team with a little care package of a notebook and a pen and a note card that says, "Do not disturb learning in progress" on one side, and another reminder of the value of Mission Control on the other side. I don't have a photo of that there, but it kind of just reinforced all the messages that we had been sending earlier. And so after all of that said and done, we've completed all of our certifications and we've identified top performers. And then our top performers were then sent custom hats that said our new sales mantra, which is humble swagger, which was it was kind of a little funny slogan, which also inevitably led to photos within the Slack channel. So that gave us a little bit more marketing touch points as to like, keep remembering us, we're here, and keep remembering to do your narrative certifications, but also like kind of in this whole experience of it's going in and out of the LMS. And then after a couple months, we recently launched that library of examples from sellers, the top examples from different teams and roles and client verticals. So we just launched this library, which is in the top right corner. And that helps to serve our new hires who come in who have to also complete the challenge during their onboarding. So I know that was a lot of information, but taking a look at our master project plan, I kind of revisited this when I was approached with this topic, and I was like, did I have an organization? And I actually can identify those 3 priorities broken down into these smaller tasks. And while I managed the whole master project plan, it was an absolute team effort. It would be a gross misrepresentation to say that I did all of this. I couldn't have done it without both Nagar and Grace to make this whole experience come to life. So first, our content creation, we uploaded existing content. So we had to create our own debut content, which I mentioned earlier. And our flagship narrative certification experience was designed by our amazing instructional designer, Grace. So she was on top of creating the workshops, facilitating those workshops, and doing all of the on-demand courses and training our managers on how to give feedback as well. So that was a huge lift on her side. Then came the technical setup of our LMS. So, everything to do with integrating into our system, making sure everybody's in it, making sure everybody's reporting to the right manager, and then also the beta launch and user testing. So I led all of those interviews and made some tweaks and changes to the structure of our LMS as a result. And then finally, that go-to-market launch plan which included the creative design, the comms planning, and everything else you saw on that marketing timeline. And I have to say, Nagar, our head of enablement, played a huge role in this piece. She's had extensive period in marketing herself, and she also played a pivotal role in gaining executive and manager support across the board, being the head of our team. So finally, what's a presentation without metrics? When it came to the LMS launch specifically, we monitored a few quantifiable metrics that I can share here. That first, the narrative certification earned a completion rate of 95%, the 5% being folks on mat and pat leave. So we actually consider this 100% completion. Our new hire program has also seen 100% completion for seller roles since launch. So we're really excited. It actually didn't take a lot of effort. Usually I'm pulling teeth to get people to do stuff, and really just a couple of reminders got people to do it. So I think we found it really exciting that people were intuitively able to navigate the system and get it done. And then secondly, our CSAT scores across the board for our debut programs were all above 92%. Some of them had 100%, and they're all continuing to trend since. And then finally, my completely unscientific metric based on purely how I feel, the constant support we hear from our cross-functional partners and the sales team alike. And I'm just really grateful to be a part of a Reddit sales team who's shown so much love and enthusiasm for the training and enablement. So that's it.
Super helpful and interesting. I absolutely loved getting to see the marketing side of a launch like this. I feel like you bring so much value from your background there, and the thought you guys put into the branding and the customization that went into this launch, and even just treating the rollout like a marketing launch. I love how you hyped it. I love how you sent out those care packages. I love the humble swagger hashtag or whatever it was that you guys were using to kind of drum up, engagement within the sales org. So all of those things are so brilliant. Actually, to rewind a little bit on that, what pieces of, I guess, content or branding or what pieces of that strategy did you need to have in place, like before you could even start working them into this plan?
Oh, definitely that branding hierarchy and an idea of the programs that we want to create. Nagar and I spent days in rooms together, just kind of mapping out the business priorities, the program priorities. What's the first thing that we could even tackle? What's the biggest impact that we can have? Really coming up with your strategy first, and then kind of understanding the programs that you're probably going to move forward with in the coming years. And then, sandboxing and seeing the different user experiences from different LMSs. As we were actually testing OrgRamp, I was saying, all right, this is customizable, this is customizable. If all of these elements have ability to put our branding on it, how does that translate, and how do we plan the branding ahead of time? So I didn't mention this, but at the same time, our entire company was going through a little bit of a rebrand. We have a little SNU character, and some of our external branding was changing too. So it was kind of like chicken before the egg. Do we go with our branding? Do we create our own? What are the cost benefits of just going with our company branding? What kind of flexibility can we create if we created our own? So we ended up actually taking cues, color cues, font cues, and all of that, and from the branding, but taking our own kind of animations just so we can illustrate and design the instructional piece of it a little bit better versus just the little SNU characters. So those are decisions that we had to make before we actually moved forward with building the LMS. So we created the visual hierarchy before then.
Awesome. Okay, super helpful. I'm learning a lot here. These are areas that I don't know much about, even though I do a lot of the sales enablement here at OrgRamp, right? So just as someone who leads the sales org, I feel like I learn a lot from these webinars on how I can train people better for sure. Another question I had was, okay, so I was really, really impressed with the engagement stats and the scores. I mean, your last slide blew me away in terms, I really love seeing that with our clients, because a lot of the times, when I see the types of stats someone is experiencing, the level of engagement with an LMS before they start working with OrgRamp on kind of the pre-sales side, it's not so great. And so I'm really happy to see those metrics for you. I'm curious, we saw your whole strategy here. It looked really effective and clearly it worked. So I'm just wondering, in your mind, what pieces of the LMS, of the rollout, of the launch, of the hype, what pieces contributed to those in really impressive engagement and enjoyment metrics that you saw from learners?
I do have to say the narrative certification, our sellers aren't really experiencing they're experiencing the LMS not through the lens of a tool. They're experiencing through the lens of the program that they get. So that's why having that narrative certification and a lot of investment in the time and energy that made it a really, really great experience was a huge part of it. We had so much good feedback afterwards. Again, another shout out to Grace. It was probably one of the best narrative certifications that I've actually been a part of. So I think that was a huge part of it. And then making sure that and the LMS kind of had the same feel of it. I think our Reddit's been around for a while, but our sales team has only been around for a few years. So it kind of was like a startup within the company and was running scrappy and lean. Our enablement team has only existed for just over a year. Nagar was only here alone for about 6 months. So, before Nagar, they were starving for structured training. They had, documents here and there. People were doing kind of rogue training on their own. So when they got this first blast of a full-on training program, I think they were kind of pretty surprised at all of the thinking and all of the energy that was put around it. And they knew that we meant business. So, we got so many great comments saying oh, wow, you're making us a real sales org, which we were always a real sales org. It's just a perception that we weren't. And I think that's really powerful when it comes to, putting out your learning programs and getting your sales teams to feel excited about it.
I love that. And I love what you said about making a first impression. I do think that matters a lot. So just to echo that, I think it's really impressive, the results you saw. And I think you guys put a lot of planning into making that happen.
Yeah, definitely.
I wanted to move into kind of learnings from the program, because I feel like we're already starting to transition into talking about those. You mentioned in the last thing you said that there was feedback from learners, and of course a ton of it was positive, but curious if you could roll out Mission Control again, what would you put more emphasis on, less emphasis on? What would you just do differently in general?
Yeah, I mean, isn't it always I wish I had more time, people, and resources would definitely be it. I think that, there was a lot that hadn't been established. I think 2020 was an interesting year for our company, both with COVID and everything that's going on, but also we had a new head of sales. We were really transitioning to fast growth. We're doing really well as a company, so it was exciting. So we're kind of like creating our strategy while our sales org was coming into its own. So if I could control that, I kind of would have been able to get ahead of that versus building it with, but it actually gave us an opportunity to have a say and a seat at that table as well. So, we worked with what we had. And I think that we could have probably built even more if we had some idea of the biggest priorities in our company. Like I mentioned, our head of sales actually started halfway through our RFP process. So a lot of things were kind of like anticipating because of our past experiences. And we know that the next head of sales will probably do this and probably do this. So it was a lot of guessing pretty accurately, frankly, but sometimes you just want to be the cart before the horse.
Yes. Cool. Great answer. A question for me that I'm just you're taking me here mentally. I mean, what's next for Mission Control? Like, how are you iterating? What are you excited to launch? Like, what's kind of next in your mind?
Yeah. So, it's just heads down on content. I think that we are starting to get on a rhythm of new products coming out. And, I'll work with Grace to create the on-demand portion that goes back to new hire. So kind of creating strategies that make our team be able to put out this level of work and this high quality content, but also work with 3 people. So creating processes within our team that really make sense. But then also now, I mentioned that we have a new team member. I've been mentioning Grace and Nagar, but Molly is our new team member. She's actually more focused on our external training. So, if we cross that bridge and when we cross that bridge, we'll obviously use a lot of what we've done, which has a lot of branding and it has had been all re-authored. It's all ready to go externally to some degree with a little tweaks here and there. So we're kind of all setting each other up for success. And then with all of that comes processes. So we've been kind of trying to figure out how that works within our team. And then now we're kind of Q4 is here. I'm going heads down and just cranking out content and starting to automate things. One of the things that I didn't mention is our new hire program kind of was put a little bit on the back burner in lieu of this. And also our hiring was slowed down a bit this year just because of anticipation for COVID and everything. So I'm heads down back again to like recreate that experience in WorkRamp because a lot of it is kind of across a couple different platforms or documents. So way more tactical stuff and really just building out this library to be as useful as possible.
Cool. Awesome. I'm excited for what's to come and I'm really glad I got to kind of be along for the ride and witness everything. At this point, let's go ahead and move into some questions from the audience if you're ready to take those. Everybody listening, feel free to chat. Drop your questions in the Q&A box or DM me directly if you'd prefer. We've got some anonymous ones, some with names attached. So ready, Ashley?
I'm ready.
So Kate Nash asked a little bit earlier, she's in SE and trying to make the case to her org to invest in an LMS. So are there any tips you can give her to kind of prove efficacy and impact on the bottom line there?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, if you can't quantify it, just ask and get the feedback from the managers that are doing the training right now. Like inevitably, if you don't have something that can scale, you don't have a place where it has a source of truth, then the more you grow, the more you're relying on salespeople and taking salespeople off the floor to do training. So this will actually help you if you're a team of 1 or a team of 2 to actually feel like you're a bigger team than you are. So, you could probably back into some money and headcount to say this is the WorkRamp or an LMS costs X amount, or you could give me 3 more people and then we could take, take all of that training off your sales and that's quantifiable for sure. So it's easier actually with a sales team because everything has money. Everybody has a head, like a revenue number on their head. I'm not sales facing, I have a revenue number on my head. So I'm sure if you crunch some numbers, you could probably make the business case to get the sellers to sell and get you to help training.
Totally. Yeah, I was going to say it's one of the easiest departments to make that case for. Not that anything is easy about building the business case internally, but when you factor in reduced ramp time, reducing that to 3 months for an entire sales org, I mean, the revenue gains there are going to be substantial. Another question from Justin, who asked a little bit earlier, Ashley, does your team produce all the learning content in WorkRamp, or do you leverage other resources for that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We made the decision to author things in an authoring tool called Rise or Articulate, and Rise is that sub platform. And we kind of made this decision, one, because a lot of us were very used to authoring that way. Two, it's SCORM. So, we love WorkRamp, but we kind of wanted to be a little bit platform agnostic when it came to the things that we authored, especially if we were going to take things externally in case we had to like move things to a site or move things. So we wanted to do that. And then third, it actually gave us a little bit more creative freedom to like structure things the way we wanted to. We still use the WorkRamp guides for more tactical things. So I have it as like our onboarding like checklist type thing because it's a little bit easier to track and monitor and update quickly. But when it comes to the official content that we put a lot of money and energy in, we author it on Articulate Rise.
Cool. Great answer. I have another question from the anonymous question bank here. So curious how you were able to get alignment across cross-functional teams who help work with you on creating this content, leadership to kind of sponsor this, maybe best practices as well for getting managers to buy into the system, to coach them on using the system, to kind of activate them in the system. How did you kind of manage to get all that alignment? Because I know it's very important. Your launch was amazing, but it's also important for people at the top to be bought in, right? For that to kind of trickle down to learners. So what was the strategy for Reddit's obviously a huge org. I'm curious to hear how you went about this.
Yeah, I think it was a few things. I think first of all, Nagar's work before I even started, I walked into an organization that had a ton of respect for sales enablement to begin with. And I think I was surprised. Not that we don't necessarily get respect, but it's not very obvious. So I think that she had gone above and beyond to help all of the cross-functional partners. She did such a great job at kind of jumping in even above her scope and the scope of our team. She does so much. So I think walking into a reputation where we help and we are helpful, and the stuff that we do is less, we don't give work to people, we take work off people's plates. So coming in with like that reputation in the beginning helped everything. And the second was that, again, the team was hungry for training anyway. And so anything that had any structure, or if it sounded like somebody knew how to design a training better than a deck made by a seller, like it was definitely welcomed. So, I wish I had like the one formula to get you there, but I do say that like make sure you're providing value for your cross-functional partners. I think enablement people come from all different kinds of backgrounds, so you can go outside of your scope and show the value you bring to the table, and you're not just there to like either take orders or tell people to do stuff. So
yes,
it's really a partnership that people see our team as.
Great. I'm so glad you have that kind of a relationship with the other teams there. This question someone else asked is, I feel like related, and you kind of touched on it slightly, even in your answer to the previous one, but do you have any tips on selling salespeople on the messaging that marketing and enablement has worked so hard on? So how do you kind of sell them on, hey, this is the narrative we should be pitching? Any tips for people who might be struggling with that in their orgs?
Yeah, I mean, I wish like Grace could take people through that program. So maybe that's another webinar for another day, but I do have to say that starting with some of the workshops that we did this all virtually, and we kind of made a really safe space for people to try and practice saying things in their own way. I think that as a seller, and I actually personally feel this myself, I would get a deck from marketing, it would have a talk track, and marketing would expect me to say this talk track. And then when I would do it, it's so awkward for me to say other people's words, and that's my personal preference. So I want to empathize with my sellers to say that like, here are the general messages that you need to get across. We have not a ton, we have no duplication across our competitors, yada, yada, yada. Like these are like the marketing metrics that you should probably hit, but your story arc is your own, and it's more believable if it's authentic. So having a multi-phase program where you're practicing and you're saying weird things and you're getting feedback and you're hearing other people say it in their own words was really helpful, and also had them learning from each other. It's not coming from marketing. Like, I don't want to hear necessarily from marketing. I want to hear from the sellers that are doing really well and speak really well. And then they had the opportunity to practice themselves. So, you know, the awesome thing about having challenges and uploading stuff, it's, you know, it's not about the upload. It's not about getting the best score. It's about how nervous you are to record yourself and put it online. So you practice it 20 times over. You know, I just had a new hire ping me and said, I'm so nervous. I think I practiced it 12 times. I was like, that's the point. Like, I don't care if it's amazing. I don't care if I'm not keeping track of your scores. I'm really just care that you practice and you're owning your own voice when you go to market, because authenticity is definitely a core to us as Reddit.
Yes. Okay, that's definitely a helpful answer. Along the same lines, like someone else just asked, how do you create kind of that continuous engagement and content with learners who are maybe more seasoned, right? So the experienced sellers who have already gone through onboarding maybe 2 years ago and don't necessarily need to go through those initial training programs. How do you kind of engage them in WorkRamp and give them an incentive to want to use the LMS or mission control?
Totally. I think that comes with like if they're a seasoned seller, they know our products, they don't need to go through 101, right?
Yeah.
They might need to find something and reference something. So that's where that user testing really made sense to me. Like in the past, it's like I was all about assigning things and making people go through stuff. But if it's something that's easy for somebody to use, and WorkRamp has a really easy way to do that, you can go into a library and browse, and the search is really, really good. So, and we did that user testing, and I was like, hey, you know, Matt, like if you forgot how to use Salesforce or you forgot how to log an activity or whatever, like what would you do? And he would be like, well, I'd come in here, and then he searched for a term that I wouldn't have guessed. It was very specific to the action he wanted to do, kind of like how you would in any help article on a website. So I was like, oh, wow, I really have to be smart about how I structure this or with the keywords that I included. So that user testing really mattered, because we actually tested it on our current sellers, not our new hires do whatever we ask them to. They just want to figure out how to do their job. So they're easy. It's the people that need to come back that we need to design for too.
Cool. Great answer. So Nick Prum asked, how do you anticipate changes to your KPIs and success metrics when you roll this out to external clients?
That's a great question. Well, externally, it's a whole different ballgame, right? Like the goal isn't for people necessarily to get through the training. Well, maybe it is. I guess it depends on what we put out. So I'm speaking for Molly in her second week. So apologies, Molly here. But like, you know, she works a lot closer with our marketing team. It's about generating leads. It's about removing the friction between the understanding of the value of Reddit or the understanding of how to set up ad campaigns within our platform. So I imagine that it's all around like, where are our friction points when getting a customer and retaining a customer, and what are the things that we can do to dislodge those friction points from an educational standpoint. Obviously, there's a lot of marketing efforts happening, but from an educational standpoint, what makes sense for us to take on as a KPI? And again, obviously getting more customers as a result of a really great experience.
Awesome. Great answer. Yeah, it is a completely different beast, but I know that we're reusing some of the same trainings there. So there's some similarities, there's some differences in goals. So
yeah, I mean, the content's the same, right? They need to understand like the value of a product. We probably have to reauthor it a little, take out all the sales tips in there, but like reauthor it. Good, Molly. I'm sorry for speaking on your behalf. They, you know, take out all the sales tips, like include more marketing speak, less like internal speak. And also just like, a lot of it is that very basic 101. So that's why we authored things that way if we move forward with the external certification.
Totally. Molly'd like to point out Reddit is a must-buy solution.
Exactly.
So everyone's reading the chat.
Molly's KPI is Reddit is a must-buy solution for your marketing needs.
Love that. Awesome. Well, I know we're getting close on timing here. So I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today, especially Ashley, Nagar, Molly, Grace, the whole Reddit team, because I know some of you guys are adding value from the chat box here. But we hope you guys all took away a ton of really good ideas from Ashley today. I know I did. So feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn here. And I'm sure I speak for Ashley here when I say we love kind of geeking out on all things enablement related. So, but yeah, Ashley, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This was fun. I appreciate it.
Yep, lots of fun. And have a really good rest of your day, guys. We'll send out the recording after, but until next time.
Bye.